Nice to see you, Esther. I'm sandwiched between the IMF and the World Bank behind me. So let's take a look at inflation, as you mentioned. So Pierre-Olivier Garanchas, the Director of Research Department at the IMF, he's pointing out that inflation 2 years ago was 9.4%, and it's falling to 3.5% by the end of next year. And in most of the countries, inflation's hovering close to what the central banks like. So that's a good thing. And so the other thing is that inflation had come down while the global economy remained, they use the word resilient. But the two biggest economies, the United States and China, have been cooling, but over in Asia has been quite robust. But the problem is with the low-income countries where they've seen their growth sort of now revised downward, and that's not good. And that's because of a variety of things, obviously because of conflicts going on in these countries and also the climate shocks. Now, the decline in inflation without a global recession, according to Garanchas, is a major achievement. So that's been a good thing. That's been big. And a lot of that's because of the monetary policy that's played a decisive role in that.
Oh, and Philip, how about in Southern Africa? I mean, Sub-Saharan Africa. What is the inflation situation like there?
Yeah, so good point. So, of course, Africa, such a diverse continent, but in Sub-Saharan Africa, the regional growth rates there, while they've sort of been steady, they should go up about 0.5% next year to about 4.3%. But the problem is, in these areas in Sub-Saharan Africa, growth is very elusive. You've got these huge debt crises in some of these countries who have to deal with food and climate and poverty crises. And when you have double-digit inflation on top of these things, and that's also happening in the Middle East as well, you have a lot of soaring prices. Inflation as high as 158%. Egypt's at 36%. Sierra Leone at 34%. Now, if you look at Ghana, where they've made some restructuring deals with the IMF, they've gone from 40% inflation to 19% and should be 12% next year. And Kenya has come down from 6.3 to 5.5. But the IMF director, who Vincent Makori spoke with earlier this week, Catalina Georgieva, was talking about adding a member to Sub-Saharan Africa to the board. And that's going to be happening next month for more representation. She's wanting more representation in Africa, and she's particularly wanting women. She's pushing for women, and we can expect to hear more from her about that going forward, that they're a great resource, she says. But the problem now with trying to correct any countries that are having their issues, you have these elevated debt levels, the interest rates are high, and this is according to Garanchas, the lead economist for the IMF. Things escalate very quickly when you have all of these factors involved. And what happens is things can get out of control. So his point is you have to bring things under control with monetary policy, because if you don't have any fiscal buffers to handle emergencies, and you have any cash for anything else that you might need in any of these countries, then you become at the mercy of the markets. And if that happens, then you're in trouble, because then you're forced to start adjusting your economies because you've been at the mercy of the markets telling you what you need to do.
Right, Philip.
But you can't move too quickly either. So it's a balancing act.
A balancing act indeed, Philip. We'll see what happens, especially with debt cancellation for African countries. Philip Alexiou reporting live for us from the IMF World Bank meetings right here in Washington, D.C.